Stay on Topic, episode 12.5. Hey, if you got a topic you want to share or want us to expound on, email us at stayontopic111@gmail, or hit me up personally on Twitter at Giltastrophe, or James Post
at PostJM9,
and Bob Ricotta
at Bob Ricotta,
who can say that for 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah.
You've come around to Twitter.
I've started to see the charm of Twitter.
Excellent. Well, we switched it up. This week, the Stay on Topic studios have moved to a swanky penthouse.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Very nice. No threat of dogs barking in the background or cats meowing.
Which, I like the effect of the animals. It kind of gives us an Ark-like feel.
Okay, so we have to get a toucan for the new studios.
I got 2 cans.
Wow.
Starting off strong.
Yeah, so to my left, the unbreakable Bob Ricotta.
Feeling con vive today.
Thank you. And
the AP style pronunciation guide on that is actually Kofefe.
That's what I was... Is it Fefe or Fifi or...
Kofefe.
Kofefe.
It's their pronunciation.
All right. Good to know.
And the guy who you just heard talking about the pronunciation of a word that doesn't exist... James Danger Post.
Danger. I'm not sure I've earned that, but okay.
So,
and you are?
Thanks, Bob, because I always forget to do this. I'm Chris Gill, who's just kind of along for the ride. This week really seemed to shape up slowly, like days on end, and nothing really new broke. There were a couple things. Wonder Woman, the DC summer blockbuster, is at last check was at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is big for Warner Brothers because all their other DC movies and attempts at building a universe comparable to Marvel's have just been so god awful.
And yet the big news about Wonder Woman was the uproar about the all-female screenings.
Yeah.
Which kind of tells you how screwed up we are as a society.
It gets more screwed up.
Go on.
But that was the first part. This is a comic book movie about the strongest of all female heroines. Wonder Woman is it. As far as female heroes go, there is nobody better. Nobody, you can argue strength on a nerd level, but nobody's more recognizable than Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And it's taken almost 100 years to get her into a movie theater, which is significant, more significant. It was directed by a lady person, which is why they had the all-female viewing. They really went heavy on building a strong world for a female to kick some ass in. And by many accounts, they've done that.
And, to be clear, with the all-female screening, this was not an early screening. This was not a special screening in any way. It was just Alamo Drafthouse saying, we're going to have a screening and we're just going to have women there. And everybody who...
The Gamergate assholes.
Exactly. Those same guys who I wish would fall off the planet. Everybody lost their shit.
Yeah, I really wish the Earth would just shake them off.
I saw a guy on Twitter who posted a picture of himself next to the ticket he'd managed to buy by using a fake name.
Oh, God.
And it's like, really? It's like, we have to, as men apparently, we have to prove that women really cannot have a place to their own or a time to their own without our permission.
Or just, why can't everybody just enjoy a Wonder Woman movie?
Yeah.
And
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I'm actually disappointed I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
In all fairness, there's a study put out by the Trump administration that if you put that many women in a room, their periods will sync up. So,
well, we thought that the all female screening was like, okay, well, that's as low as we can get about this movie. Nope, Fox News one-upped it.
Yeah,
as they are wont to do.
And maybe
it had to have a panel.
Yeah, they had a panel discussion about the Wonder Woman movie on Neil Cavuto's show, and Dion Baia, is that how you pronounce it? Baia, commented that Wonder Woman wasn't American enough. Quote, I think nowadays, sadly, money trumps patriotism. Wonder Woman is not an American character by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. I think people have memories of her being decked out in basically the American flag from the time period when she came over during World War II.
Right.
And that was kind of the way she was presented. That was the style at the time. But I did see notes on Twitter that it was someone recognizable, and I apologize, I can't remember who it was, that pointed out that Fox, of course, has no grasp of their own irony in the fact that the only color that's missing from the flag is white.
Yeah. She has red, white, and gold. And that was actually mentioned.
She's wearing red and blue and no white.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. But that's another point they hit on.
They're angry about her lack of whiteness.
Yes. And for listeners who aren't familiar with the character, she's an Amazonian warrior.
She's great.
An Amazonian warrior princess. And, I don't expect everybody to be that deep in nerd culture, but if you're going to go on air and talk about it, just do a little homework. Yeah. Just Wikipedia that shit.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you would know this. Wasn't she brought into the Justice League way back in the 40s to be like the receptionist?
Yes.
Yes.
She was the secretary.
Okay. And obviously we haven't moved that far from that point.
Some people have not moved that far.
No, but this is the most badass woman in comic bookdom, bar none. In terms of, especially, being recognizable to everybody in the world.
Sure.
I memean, whoever is second on that list is very distant. So the fact that they got this movie into theaters is a big goddamn deal. And it sucks that people have to find a way to shit on it.
Yeah.
But another attack of some sort is happening in London as we're recording this. We want to acknowledge it and just with all our heart hope the damage is minimal, but we just don't have enough information because this news is breaking as we're talking.
Yeah. So we're speaking from Friday night at this point. So it's in the midst of, the Metro Police aren't revealing much. We literally don't know what's going on. So
no. So that's all we can really say about that without being incredibly irresponsible. What we can say is Kathy Griffin is a Nimrod.
That is true.
I don't care what your political allegiance is. Her photo shoot with a beheaded Donald Trump was just utterly vile. And if it sinks her career, good.
Well, here's my thing. I'm not easily offended. So I really don't see it as vile. I think it's stupid. Anything like that is going to be... I mean, the Secret Service actually did open an investigation. I don't imagine it lasted long. But my biggest thing is it's just not funny.
No, nothing she does is like, she is a shock comedian.
Yeah. And she was trying for shock and failed.
Yeah, well, she shocked a lot of people,
Wow.
But it wasn't funny. I mean, Don Rickles was great at shocking you and making you laugh. She can't do it. She's an Andy Dick. The world is, better off without her talents. She's just not funny.
And I'm a little confused why she has a career at this. What does she do?
I don't know.
I mean, the last thing I knew, she was like a fashion reporter on the red carpet at award shows.
She's a personality? I think that's a thing now.
Why do we care what Kathy Griffin does?
No.
Well, I mean, she had a relationship with CNN because of basically New Year's Eve coverage. So that's really why everyone had an excuse to sort of blow this up, which was sort of my point on this, which is, why did this story last as long as it did?
It was...
I mean, obviously, it was incredibly poor judgment. I have no problem at all with CNN saying they don't want a relationship with her after that. But somehow we still have to have hot takes on it like 3 days later.
Yeah, the the big thing was just how awful the imagery was. And, I'm all for free speech and art. I fully support the arts and think the government should as well. But if you're going to put something that bad out into the world, you have to expect some kind of backlash.
Yeah.
And for her to act like, oh, I didn't. We always, especially on this show, talk about a conservative Republican bubble. She dwelled wholly in a liberal bubble.
Yeah.
She did not think this was going to be received the way it was, because she's like, well, everybody believes this. Everybody I talk to and hang out with believes this. So this is what everyone believes, and no one will be that upset.
Well, and, I guess to answer my own question, as far as why this story lasted so long, she initially, after a day, issued an apology that sounded relatively sincere. And then held a press conference with her attorney.
Yeah.
Saying that the Trump administration was trying to silence her.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody cared about what you said. The Trump administration had nothing to do with this. You were shut down by CNN and by the American public, who thought what you did was disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this could kill her career.
Yes.
Absolute career killer.
But she's got to have a high profile lawyer and have a press conference as if, I was surprised she wasn't out there with Gloria Allred. Like, where does she think this is going from here?
No, she'll end up a footnote like Michael Richards.
Yeah.
The thing it speaks to for me is the separation between the person of the president and the office of the president. And even if you don't respect the person who is president, you show some respect for the office of the president. And, he is the leader of our country. And we have the right and the responsibility, when we feel he is wrong, when we feel he is acting in poor judgment, to call him out. We do not have a right to threaten his life. We do not have a right to satirize taking his life. Show some respect for the office of the president.
That's just common decency.
Which Republicans and conservatives did for 8 years when Obama was president.
Yeah, burning an effigy, the lynching in effigy of Obama was probably the most tasteless thing I've ever seen in a political arena.
Yeah.
So, no, that wasn't decried nearly as much because no one high profile did it. It was Joe somebody in a rally or something.
So I do have to wonder then, after this week, her career is probably over. A lot of people have been drawing an equivalency between that and a comment made by Bill Maher.
Yeah.
I heard about it. I did not read the comment.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
I mean, it was another comedian who's not that funny, Bill Maher.
Yeah, never has been.
Another guy or another comedian that just likes to shock you and say things that upset you to rile you up. He's rarely funny.
I didn't even think he was classified as a comedian anymore.
He does stand up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he used the awful N-word.
Okay.
Live on his HBO show Friday night.
What context? How did he use it? I
know the quote, and I don't like saying the word.
No, and I don't want you to say the word.
Thank God.
But like, was he using it as a quote, or was he?
Nope. He said, "I'm an indoor N-word," meaning that in response to
I think it was house. N-word.
House. Okay. And
yeah, and it was in the exact context where it's really not acceptable to say when you're white.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Or the worst possible context, because it was a direct reference to slavery.
Kumail Nanjiani had the most on-the-nose tweet about that, which was, you get to be a white person in America, and the only thing you shouldn't do is use that word. And I was like, yeah, that's about right.
and this
was it the same? I can't remember. I saw several good tweets from African American thinkers and media members on this, and the one was that you can use that word if you know what it feels like to be treated as that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm blessed to not have to know that.
And this is, in my eyes, an opportunity to not be a hypocrite, because Bill Maher quite often lines up with what I believe in politically. But he acted like a jackass, apparently, and we'll call him out for being a jackass and being wholly insensitive and wholly inappropriate.
But the sole response from HBO was to say that they disapprove of what he said and that they're going to remove that remark for future airings.
Boy, I have a little bit of a problem with that. That's a little too close to censorship for me.
Well,
Let people decide for themselves. You know, hey, he put it out there in the world.
Yeah,
let people decide for themselves.
Let the sponsors,
Well, HBO doesn't have sponsors.
yeah.
They don't
The
have
shareholders?
advertisers. If you want to punish Maher, punish him. But to take that down or to edit it out, to me, that's a bridge too far. Maybe run a warning before that episode or something, fine. Let people know it's there and that could really, be offensive, okay. But yeah, when you start removing things from...
Who was it who did the... this is going to be one of those things that goes nowhere because no one will be able to remember the answer. Somebody did a monologue on SNL, which actually was hilarious. That on future airings just open with a text crawl saying that whoever it was, and it was a black comedian, gave an incredibly funny and incisive commentary, which we cannot air again. And that's all that they show on reruns.
Oh, yeah. Not sure about
I
that.
can't remember who it was.
I believe it was Bill Cosby.
Oh, wow. Too soon.
Speaking of things that should not be, Donald Trump decided to pull the United States of America out of the largest global effort to do anything about anything in the history of civilization.
And, I'm a big fan of pulling out. But this... I watched the speech. that Donald Trump gave. And it was clear that he had no idea what he was talking about. He wasn't just giving alternative facts to bolster his reason. He was just talking nonsense. And it was clear he did not know what the Paris Accords were.
Yeah.
And we should have had a first reference to the Paris Accords. James, the Paris Accords are...
Well, the Paris Accords were signed in, I don't have 2013?
13 or 14. But this was something
December
that
2015.
Well, okay, I'm way off.
the United States took the lead position in this. Go ahead.
Yes. Obviously under former President Obama, setting a goal for all of these nations to reach that would be based on their own needs, because obviously different countries have different levels of industrialization, different levels of carbon emissions, but basically everyone trying to do what they need to do to keep global temperature rise under 2 degrees C. And I would just like to take this moment to applaud the president for having the courage, a term he's used himself to describe his decision, to withdraw from a non-binding agreement with voluntary emission standards.
But in the same, I don't know if it was the same sentence or at least the same paragraph, but he described the accords, the agreement, as both non-binding and draconian.
Yes.
Like he knows what that means.
How can you be both? How can you be draconian if you don't have to follow the rules?
Yeah. But no, this has been sort of the story of the week. And in a way, it's obviously it's a terrible message for U.S. leadership in the world.
Well,
But it's also a non-binding agreement that we're no longer bound by.
what gets me is, and again, the world has never come together on any single issue in the history of mankind like this.
Except for two other countries before us, Syria and Nicaragua.
And even they had different reasons for not doing it.
Well,
Explain.
Syria had a little bit of a civil war going on at the time, so they were unable to send a negotiator to the treaty. Nicaragua walked out. Nicaragua actually thought that the treaty basically was toothless because it was non-binding. The negotiator for Nicaragua told the press after the negotiations were over, quote, "These voluntary commitments don't work," and said that the goal of keeping temperature rise below 2 degrees C weren't matched by the actions being recommended in the accord. And just in case you think this is Nicaragua just, being on its high horse and thinking that they don't have to go along with the international community, according to BBC News, Nicaragua already gets more than half its energy from renewable resources, and they've targeted 90% by 2020.
Wow.
The World
South
Bank-
American countries have it going on where this is concerned. And a lot of people always think of South American countries through the lens of Romancing the Stone or some shit. But they are way ahead of us on this.
The World Bank in 2013 called Nicaragua, quote, "a renewable energy paradise."
And Brazil is moving and has been making huge strides in that direction.
So, I mean, if you want to look effectively, it's really just us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, I
But it's not even all of us. New York and California have
Yeah.
said they're going to stick to the Paris Agreement, the Paris Accords.
And there's already been, just over the course of the day, I've seen some tweets from New York Governor Cuomo's office saying that other governors have started to sign on.
as of this recording, there are 4 states officially pledged to follow this, and 180 mayors from major metropolitan cities that are going to honor this.
Including Pittsburgh, which Donald Trump mentioned prominently.
Yeah.
He's so stupid.
Just out of touch.
There were people in his own...
No. There's out of touch and there's stupid. And this guy is stupid.
We're going to be about Pittsburgh, not Paris.
Yeah.
The people of Pittsburgh didn't vote for you, asshole.
And there are people in his own cabinet who were in favor.
80% of the people of Pittsburgh didn't vote for you.
Minor players like Gary Cohn, the director of the National Economic Council, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson both supported staying in.
Rex Tillerson.
Gary Cohn will be coming up again later in the podcast, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
But Rex Tillerson used to run Exxon.
Yes.
And he's like, these accords are pretty good.
Yeah.
We should stick around.
Along with IBM and GE, both in favor of staying with the Paris Accord.
Well, it's,
And Disney CEO Bob Iger stepped down from a presidential advisory council because of this.
yeah.
I was like, okay,
Elon Musk did the same thing.
Yeah.
They're like, I've put up with some shit from this guy, but no. And also, a lot of people point to the advice Trump got from his EPA head, Myron Ebell? Ebell?
You're on your own on this
Okay.
one.
Well, he's...
The EPA head isn't Pruitt?
Okay. I had him down as EPA. Myron Ebell is also the director of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which is one of those big think tanks that they name something that sounds really cool and forward-thinking, that all they're really doing is trying to advance their own purposes. And for this purposes, it's gas and coal and everything. And he is, in the cabinet, and he was quoted as saying, there was a real debate in the White House and in the cabinet. So we just wanted to remind the president of which side he's on. Abel believes climate change is, quote, phony and, quote, a bogus pretext for expanding government. This was one of the league counselors to our president.
There is good news. There's a lot of good
news.
There's a lot of good news actually. It's nice to see that leaders in the industry, members of his own party and his administration, speaking in favor of the Paris Agreement.
Well, industry is going to move this way. No matter what the U.S. says, no matter what the EPA says, they can roll back every regulation that there is. Industry is going to go where the market's going. And the market is going to renewable resources. They're cheaper.
Yeah.
They've become cheaper.
Correct. Coal plants are not being built because of the Paris Agreement. They're not being built because they're not economically viable right now. So, yeah, the market is going to drive this move towards renewable energy.
And so many of these countries have to do business, or so many of these companies have to do business in other countries. And those countries aren't going to, their customers in those other countries aren't going to look kindly on them having a terrible environmental record in their home country.
Or just the sentiments coming from the White House. Yeah. I mean, after a lot of this, him pulling out of the Paris Accord just seems like a child lashing out. He's lashing out against Obama, and I still don't get his obsession with Obama. Obama's never running for an office ever again.
Yeah.
Why does he keep on this guy?
Obama's just hanging around having a good time.
Yeah. But also Emmanuel Macron. Yeah. Macron. Croissant. He was really critical of Trump, and Trump did not take kindly to it. It feels like Trump is just lashing out against these people who he feels have wronged him. I mean, this feels very childish. And I wouldn't put it past him to that being his primary motivator. I don't think this is about money. I don't think this is about...
No, it has nothing to do with jobs because...
No, certainly not.
Because, again, this was an agreement we were not bound by in any way. He could have done whatever he wanted to do as far as environmental regulation. And the Paris Accord would have had no effect on that. So the only reason to pull out is to be visible in pulling out.
Which I don't ever want to hear in context of Donald Trump ever again. Unless those Russian tapes come out, then I'm all about it.
In his speech, he talked about the Paris Agreement as if it laid out what we would have to do as a country. It doesn't do that.
No.
It just sets standards, and then each country is free to choose its own methods to reach those standards. So he can say,
which is why Nicaragua gave it the finger. Yeah.
So Donald Trump is free to say we don't agree with the Obama administration's approach. We're going to take a different approach. But he acted like we were bound by these ironclad laws to put coal miners out of work, which we weren't. No. I mean, non-binding.
No. Progress is going to put coal miners out of work.
Well, and that's,
not a president, not a congressman, not a senator. Progress is going to put coal miners out of work. They're going to have to find something else to do.
We've talked about this before, actually. What's put coal miners out of work so far has not been environmental regulation. It's been automation.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to have a machine dig for coal than to have a human do it.
Talking from someone who felt forced out of an industry that had to change, I know their feeling. It sucked leaving journalism.
Yeah.
I fucking hated leaving journalism. But the future there keeps getting smaller and smaller. And it sucks, but
now you're left with just people like me.
Yeah, I mean, Ricotta and I felt kind of squeezed out because it was inevitable. And we hate it. So I know how these guys and gals...
Yeah, I mean...
I know your pain.
You got 50-year-old guys who have, they're 15 years away from retirement. What are they going to do, retrain?
I know. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I now work in a warehouse for almost twice as much as I made as a journalist.
But when the first automobiles hit the road, the manufacturers of the buggy whip were put out of business.
It's progress. It's painful. I get it. But man, sometimes you just have to accept that. Wrong place, wrong time.
Wasn't this the subject of one of the worst West Wing episodes ever?
Yes.
First reference. Way to go, Bob.
But it wasn't clever. It was just kind of...
Doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
there. We got one in.
So one of the most ridiculous things that Donald Trump said is that we would renegotiate the Paris Agreement to get a better deal for the United States. How do you renegotiate with 194 other countries?
Yeah.
Well, and that was his suggestion, wasn't it? That he was going to have like bilateral agreements with other countries, like on a one-to-one basis,
Right.
rather than being part of this giant. It's like, yeah.
What leverage do you bring to the table? James visibly shrugged.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It was the art of the deal.
What a buffoon.
Although,
What
No one-
leverage do you have in climate negotiations when you have 4% of the population and you're the second largest polluter on the planet?
I guess we could shoot for number one.
If you don't make this deal with us, we'll start polluting more.
One of the things that may bring some comfort to the people who are freaking out is under the withdrawal process laid out in the Paris Agreement, it will take about 4 years for us to fully pull out of this
But again,
non-binding.
what does that even mean?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's non-binding. Because we never pulled in.
that's the
Wow,
worst.
no.
That's the worst.
I'm actually cutting that.
Yeah. I would highly recommend that.
So
So you should call back to it later so that I can't cut it. That's the best way to keep me from doing that.
It's hotter than fucking here.
off goes the shirt. Okay. We're doing that now.
I'm trying to keep out the road noise.
So the omnipresent black cloud over our country, Russia. No major.
I could go for a black Russian
Things-
right now.
Well, I'm doing martinis, a vodka martini, no less, with a blood orange,
It's sort of a martini.
martini-ish. Oh, you're a martini snob, are you?
I don't even like martinis, but I do know they're made with gin.
Vodka martinis are great. So anyway, a few things pertaining to the Russian investigation into Donald Trump's campaign and how it may or may not have been influenced by Russia. This week, the White House is starting procedures to give Russians back compounds in Maryland and New Jersey after Obama chased them out last year for spying and trying to influence our elections. And that started the week off.
It's like the show The Americans, but if you watch it in reverse.
I've heard that somewhere. It's very clever. And The Americans is probably one of the best television shows to come along ever. But also James Comey back in the news, James.
Excuse me. James Comey, set to testify supposedly Thursday was the last that was reported in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee in open hearing, which is already, it's going to be interesting to see if that ends up getting picked up. I'm assuming the 24-hour news channels will probably be running that testimony live. Wonder how many people will be watching. But at one point it was questioned by the White House whether Comey would be allowed to testify. It was suggested that because Comey would be talking about private conversations with the president, that the office of the president could invoke executive privilege to keep him from testifying. Executive privilege basically meaning the president's private communications are private, and it's really hard to subpoena them unless you have a good reason. That story lasted about a day, where they were threatening to try and keep him from testifying.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I guess, Thursday, there were a couple of high-level senior officials in the White House who, of course, declined to be named, who told major media outlets that they're not going to do that. They're not going to try and stop him from testifying. And it should be pointed out that Slate reported, and yes, Bob, I am citing Slate.
Thank you.
For our listeners who may be new to the show, James tries to Christ, Slate is terribly liberally biased. Every chance is now
I don't think
citing them.
I don't think that their reporting is terrible. I don't think that their site is full of lies. Their story selection is incredibly biased. If I look at their front page, I'm only going to see things that support a liberal viewpoint.
Right.
What's in there will be relatively factual, but I'm not going to see anything from the other side there. And I'm not going to see any strong sources quoted from the other side there either. That's another thing.
When the Huffington Post seems like Fox News in comparison, Slate's pretty left-leaning.
Yeah. But anyway, they did a little story on this earlier today, actually, and quoted a law professor from Cornell who said, basically, breaking executive privilege isn't a crime. So unless the White House could actually get a judge to issue an injunction stopping Comey from speaking to the Senate committee, which would be nearly impossible, there's nothing they could do to stop him from testifying.
No, a big deal was made about this, mainly because now we've become so knee-jerky to everything that happens around this story that we're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it was a little bit of a non-story. Like, it would have been a big story, or it potentially will be a big story, if they actually try to stop him from talking, or he winds up dead in a hotel room.
And either one of those things could happen.
I'm not ruling either out.
It's good to see that the Trump administration learned at least something from the Nixon administration, that the cover-up is often worse than the crime.
Yeah.
If they had actually gone forward and tried to shut Comey up, that would have looked horrible.
Or they're confident enough to know that they have, no matter what Comey says, there is nothing rock solid to hurt the president or the vice president. I think eventually Michael Flynn is going to go down hard.
That's what she said.
Yeah. Jeff Sessions could really go down hard.
Yeah.
Maybe Jared Kushner. There's just not enough fact behind Jared Kushner yet to really know anything. But Sessions and Flynn, man, there is enough there.
And short of the president, obviously, Sessions would be the big get.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the attorney general gets taken down, that's pretty big. But this whole thing just seems to me like they have nothing tangible on Trump at all. So either he was too smart, or somebody working for him was smart enough to shield him from this.
We're not really going to know until, if Comey does go, in front of the Senate Intel on Thursday and repeats everything that we've been told he's going to say, that Trump told him to lay off the investigation, that he did it repeatedly, that Trump asked him to say publicly that Trump himself was not under investigation, which is something that's been alleged. Right. That's something that maybe isn't immediately incriminating, but could fall, the definition of what counts as impeachable is pretty vague.
Again, I don't think this Russian thing is going to touch Trump.
I don't think it's going to touch Trump, but only because we have a House of Representatives led by Republicans.
I don't think it's going to touch Trump because they have nothing tangible. They've shown no evidence of anything tangible.
Well, I mean, if
unless James Comey goes into those and puts his phone down, pulls the microphone down to the speaker on the phone, and hits a recording with Trump's voice,
please,
that is the only way they're ever going to incriminate the guy. Again, I said it last week. The only thing that's going to bring down Donald Trump is his heart or his wife, who hates him.
If things go down the way James described, that flirts with obstruction of justice.
It flirts, but there's no concrete evidence. It's hearsay. It's one man's word against another.
But it's not hearsay. I mean, by the legal definition, it's not hearsay. It's a person testifying about something that was said by the person who was the subject of the investigation. That's inherently not hearsay.
Okay, so that was a misspeak. So Comey will say, and they bring Trump in and grill him, and he's like, did any of these conversations ever take place? Nope. Okay, we're done here. You've got nothing.
But at what point if it gets to that point, if it actually reaches the point where they're asking Trump for his response and he's speaking in front of a Senate committee, it's already over. And
I'll get excited about it at that point.
At that point, they would have already asked Trump, not asked, but subpoenaed Trump for any recordings of anything that went on in the Oval Office. And there's already been a lot of talk that this is a guy who does record things.
And
Trump threatened himself that he had recordings.
And Trump's response would likely be, no, I burned those.
Yeah.
Just because he's an idiot.
And let's not forget that Comey was the head of the FBI. So he may have had the presence of mind to actually record these things.
I hope so. I really do. But unless he does have those recordings, I'm not getting excited.
Well, and, I don't know about Senate and impeachment. I don't know. I know that in New York, recordings are not admissible unless both parties know that the recordings are being made. And that, maybe different on this level.
Well, the recordings from Watergate were used to take down Nixon or to force Nixon to resign. So unless the laws have changed in that regard,
I thought New York was a one-party consent state.
Not. I don't think so.
As far as court admissibility, I'm not sure, but I can record a conversation with a source without asking their permission.
Correct, but you can't use that right. But you cannot use that in court against that person.
Well, we also reached a new low in partisanship. Washington Post reports that the White House has instructed agencies to ignore any oversight inquiries from Democrats. So,
and the response on that was pretty interesting, too.
Yeah, it was. Basically, every administration does this. When Obama was in the White House, they would put any Republican inquiries on the back burner or take their time getting to them, and maybe sometimes outright ignore them. But it was never ordered to do that. This is a direct order to all the agencies to just say anything the Democrats want, fuck them. Nope. So that,
I think we've hit our personal best for the F-bombs in one.
Yeah.
No, I think we had more last week.
Well, fuck that.
Oh, okay.
But no, the response out of the White House was, we didn't say ignore anything coming from Democrats. We said that you only have to honor requests coming from committee chairs.
Which are all Republicans.
Another fun little note. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to reinstate the travel ban. That was signed into law via executive order in January and nixed by courts and lost an appeal.
Yeah.
So now they're going to try the Supreme Court. That will be a big test. If it advances, that will be a big test of this new Supreme Court.
I can't see it not advancing.
Well, because aren't there conflicting lower court opinions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so they pretty much have to take it up.
Yeah. So to me, that is okay. We'll see what this iteration of the Supreme Court is really all about.
And once again, it falls on Kennedy. He's the swing.
Yeah.
He's the swing vote.
One last fun little political note. Hillary Clinton has just been going, it's like on the road with Hillary Clinton lately. She's just talking to anybody who will listen. Basically, last week came out and said the DNC gave her next to nothing for her presidential campaign. Like, she had to take money that she got from her campaign to help prop up the DNC.
Okay. So
it just kind of shows you where the Democrats are, not only in fundraising, but organization. And they want to win either the Congress or the Senate back with this kind of operation. Just shoddy. Very shoddy.
Yeah.
So what everyone do fun last week? Anybody?
One other thing I wanted to get to, actually.
Do it.
Infrastructure.
Oh yes. This is kind of late breaking.
Yeah, I didn't see this until about 5 o'clock today. About the same time on Washington Post and New York Times, this broke. Supposedly on Monday, the White House is going to announce their plan for infrastructure. And if you'll remember, there was a promise of $1 trillion in new spending on infrastructure as a campaign promise. This is what we're going to do.
Jobs.
Jobs.
We're going to rebuild bridges. And...
Yep. And both stories, Washington Post and the Times, citing heavily Gary Cohn, saying that the president will come out with next week with this plan that will cut back massively on the federal role in road, bridge, railway, and inland waterway construction and maintenance, and basically shift all the costs to cities and states. And if you're paying attention to the small print in Trump's budget proposal, it got drowned out by so many other things that raised hackles. He only had $200 billion for infrastructure over the next 10 years in that plan, which is a cut from current spending.
And well below the $1 trillion he campaigned on.
Yes.
So when you say a cut, we're not talking just increasing it less than what was promised. We're talking a literal cut.
Yes. The next 10 years would be spending less than had been spent over the previous 10 years. And Democrats did talk about that at the time the budget came out, but it just got drowned out.
Right.
But basically, according to Cohn, the White House is counting on private sector buy-in to cover these costs. They're saying they're going to throw in sort of seed capital and expect the private sector to pick up the tab and end up with that $1 trillion figure.
The private sector always does what's in the best interest of the citizens.
Oh yes, and apparently White House aides have been heard floating the idea of actually outright selling off airports and roads to private investors.
So like this stretch of highway sponsored by GE.
More like
GE owns this highway company that's making this highway. And I totally caught the router right out of midair. That was cat-like.
You're like a ninja.
That's actually the cable modem, but okay. But no, it sounds like the plan is more like investors taking over roads and installing toll booths.
So to recoup their investment.
Yes. The first step of this plan, which will supposedly be announced Monday to actually go forward, is privatizing air traffic control.
Great idea.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it's been done effectively in other countries. Whether it will be done effectively here, whole other story. But yeah, so...
You know what? We don't need 10
again,
air
this
traffic
just breaking
controllers.
this
I think we can get by with 5.
Well,
those salaries cost money.
Well, and those 14-hour shifts.
Yeah, well, we'll just work them 17-hour shifts.
So I guess my question is, does the Trump administration have any more feet that they can shoot themselves in?
Mm-hmm.
Because
there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of feet.
There's a lot of feet, yeah. But I mean, seriously, after the whole Russia thing, after the debacle with the American Health Care Act, the one thing that they could have hung their hat on was a massive jobs bill fixing the country's infrastructure. And they fucked that up.
Yeah. We've been knocking on that door since day one of this podcast, and unbelievably, it seems like they're going to screw it up. And Trump has been campaigning on building your way out of debt since before he ever ran for president. Like 10 years ago, he was talking about, you got to build. You have to build stuff to get out of debt. To give the economy a kick in the ass. He's been campaigning on this for a decade. Well before he was ever in any race for anything. And it seems like the party just beat him down.
James, any insight as to how the Republicans in Congress could make lemonade out of this lemon?
This is a spoiled lemon. You don't make lemonade out of this. You throw this lemon away.
I don't know. I mean, in a way, it's baked in to the budget. If they can actually get something that resembles Trump's budget passed, that the infrastructure, the way it's being described here, doesn't really require legislation. It's just a framework for how to think about how we're going to build infrastructure if we're not going to actually pay for it.
Okay. I guess I was thinking more politically, and I mean, I think
no, I think they're going to stay as far away from this as they can.
okay. So this will never become reality, is what you're saying.
It can become reality if they don't have to pass anything to make it reality.
Okay.
Which I think is a possibility. If Republican senators particularly have to vote for this, I'm not seeing it.
No.
Right.
No. So what'd you guys do fun last week? Anything good?
I binge watched Kimmy Schmidt.
And it improved from your last.
It's growing on me.
I told you.
It's growing on me. I'm enjoying it.
It just gets more wackadoo.
Yeah, and that's it's basically a fish out of water story.
Yep.
At some point, you can't lean on that. The fish is bad. She's got to acclimate herself to her environment. She can't be clueless about society for the entire run of the series.
Right.
So you've got to start building characters and relationships, which they've started to do. And it's become, and Jane Krakowski. Delightful, exactly. So that's what I've been doing. I've been watching Kimmy Schmidt. I've got season 2 left to go. That'll probably take me up till next weekend.
2 and 3.
Oh?
Yeah, season 3 just dropped last week. I finished it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I'm still in Master of None season 2.
Okay. And what are your thoughts?
The online dating episode, I forget the name of it.
I haven't started season 2. So
they had a fantastic episode. And you know how they kind of hit cultural issues contained in 1 half-hour episode?
Yep.
They did one on online dating or app dating or however it's being referred to now. And it was brilliant. Like, it was so well done. So more and more I'm liking that show. Also, last week was the Indianapolis 500, won by Takuma Sato, a former F1 Japanese driver.
Who, for some reason, people had trouble pronouncing his last name.
Takuma Sato. It's not difficult.
Japanese are the most phonetic.
Yeah. Chinese are tough. Some Chinese names are really difficult, but Japanese, for the most part, pretty easy to pronounce. But you had... Again, a former F1 guy winning. You had a current F1 guy who could have won it. I expect to see this and Alexander Rossi won it the year before, who was also in F1. I could see F1 more and more guys or drivers, don't mean to be sexist, jumping ship and it's like, you know what? Fuck Monaco. I'm going to try the Indy 500 because we seem to do really well over there. And it's wide open. Anybody has a chance to win this without being restrictor platey.
Yeah.
So yeah, last weekend was my favorite weekend of the year in terms of sitting on a couch and watching stuff happen in front of me. James.
Entertainment-wise, I really didn't do anything terribly exciting last week. The most interesting thing that happened to me last week was actually yesterday. I spent an electrifying 90 minutes with the New York State controller.
DiNapoli?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got it right.
Nice.
He came and met with our editorial board at the Corning Leader, where I'm the assistant editor, and actually really great guy. Like him a lot. It really helped to sort of smooth out the opening introductions and stuff. That our publisher is actually really well acquainted with Tom DiNapoli to begin with. He recognized him and they had things to talk about. So, but talked a lot about sort of state corruption and that kind of stuff that he deals with. And the guy's been around 10 years, and obviously a lot of things have happened in New York State government. Governors indicted, things like that.
It's been a wild ride for New York politics the last 15 years or so.
And a lot of editorials have been written, I'm sure, over the years, calling the Honorable Thomas DiNapoli the last honest man in Albany, the last honest man in New York State government. May actually be the case. Just the most straightforward guy, just like, I want to do my job, and I don't understand why people hassle me about it. So it was actually really interesting. I've got a lot of tape to go through to try and figure out what to write out of that meeting.
Tape. There's that word again.
And that'll
what else do you say?
recording. It's a recording. Did you actually record it on a cassette?
No.
Then it's not a tape.
And
People,
that-
stop that.
But there's not a good replacement term.
A recording.
I've got a lot of recording to go through. That
I have
recording into
I have a
gerund.
really long recording to go through.
That just seems awkward. But whatever.
Speaking of awkward, it really speaks volumes about James Post that his most exciting thing of the week was talking to the New York State Comptroller.
Little known fact, it is actually supposed to be pronounced controller.
Really? The P is silent?
Well, the P actually is...
God, this is where we start losing listeners.
It is.
No, we started losing listeners when you talked about the Indy 500.
The P is vestigial from comptroller, which is from the French to count. But
Another
if you
thing from the French.
So if you pronounce it with that in mind, you wouldn't pronounce the P. It would be just controller.
Okay.
And most corporations which have somebody in that same position have, they just call them the controller. It's
Gotcha.
the same thing.
That's a cool title, by the way, the Controller.
Yes.
I want to be the Controller.
I'm pretty sure it's a thing in BDSM. Anyway, did get some feedback from our, is it GIF or GIF little spurt last week. Overwhelmingly, people want to pronounce it GIF.
Yeah. But, I mean, didn't we establish that the creator of that thing,
He intended it to be GIF.
then I've got to flip and go with GIF.
I'm sticking
Why?
GIF. I'm sticking
Because
with GIF.
the creator,
The author is dead, man.
so you got to respect his...
I think you're thinking of the guy that made the USB. He's dead.
No, I'm saying we don't turn to the creator of a piece of work of any kind to ask how to interpret it. That's lazy.
That's deep.
It's coming from an English lit major.
Okay. That's deep. What you looking forward to this week?
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I really want to see
Wonder
that.
Woman, yep.
The reviews I've read are, holy cow, this is such a better movie than the previous 3 pieces of shit that DC Warner Brothers has put out. But it's still got some problems. It feels like it was edited by producers and not by the
Yeah,
director.
I heard there was some tone shifts at the end that were
Yep.
trying to make it look more like BVS or Man of Steel. But the general tone, not to repeat myself, of the reviews I've seen has been, it's so much better than those other movies, and that's not actually giving it enough credit.
That's what I want to
That
determine
it's-
for myself. Are they basing this off of DCEU or just comic movies in general or movies in general? Where are they getting this?
Yeah, is it being graded on a curve because its predecessors were so bad?
Right.
Or can it stand on its own as a good movie?
I've seen reviews who claim they're not doing that they're consciously not grading it against those movies. They're saying it's a good movie on its own.
Well,
So we'll see.
Yeah.
next week we should be able to talk to that.
I hope so.
We need to work that out.
Yes, we do. Let's...
We'll give it a shot. Sorry. Wait,
you really can't sing.
It's like 3 martinis in. What do you want?
A fourth?
Forthcoming.
Well
But the
done.
nice thing is if you sing, we're not going to get any copyright strikes.
That's very true.
The bots will never pick it up.
No.
Never.
Unrecognizable.
Nope. So yeah, outside of really the usual E3 24-hour Le Mans is coming up.
Le Mans?
Yeah, the 24-hour Le Mans.
As opposed to the 24 hours of lemons, which is totally different.
Totally different. That's a much different thing. It's an orgy. But yeah, we got some Americans over there in France and the Team Corvette, which be cheering on big time. But other than that, yeah, I really can't do much of anything video game wise until after I move into a new place and I have time to just sit and do nothing but play video games, which is, I can't wait for that day.
You have the aspirations of a 15-year-old boy.
Yeah. One weird little pop culture footnote from 30 plus years ago popped up this week. Somebody posted a thing on Facebook about their local theater was playing Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins on the big screen again. And, you know, for those of us who grew up in that era, and the movie was released in 85, love that movie. That movie was so far ahead of its time in terms of world building and, you know, taking graphic pulp novels and turning them into movies. It was just way too nichey for anybody but us nerds to get into.
And it's if you look at it now, it's a little cheesy. It looks a little TV movie.
Yeah, but
I still love it. And I loved it when I was,
the movie had no budget and was working with the special effects they had available to them at the time.
Yeah.
So a mini uproar exploded because people were pointing out that an American actor, Joel Grey, played Chun, a Korean kind of a Yoda type character who was mentoring Fred Ward's character, Remo Williams,
That's like
to become the ultimate killing machine. And people were just, yeah, well, the movie can't hold up because of that awful racism that existed. It's like, that's what the movie is. I mean, you can't undo it. It doesn't ruin the actual movie or the narrative or anything. And Joel Grey kicked ass as Chun.
It's not like having a white guy play Tonto or anything.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah, it's not like we've actually come that far if you think about it.
no, not so much. But it
It's
just struck me as weird that it's this 32-year-old
the Wachowski movie with Tom Hanks and all the people playing different.
Oh yeah, Pluto. Something.
Oh God, this is terrible.
The Last Samurai?
No,
I shouldn't. Cloud Atlas.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cloud Atlas, where we had people in yellow face all over the place.
But that movie was different because of the context. They were using the same actors. It was basically a movie about
the same souls residing in different people over the course of history.
Yeah, so what they did kind of worked.
Yeah.
In that sense. But
they look terrible. But
it just reminds me of the outrage people had of Tilda Swinton playing the Ancient One in Doctor Strange.
Well,
the outrage of, oh my, people were getting pissed off because they didn't change Danny Rand in Iron Fist to an Asian guy.
You know what?
Even though he was white in the source material.
Yeah. You know what makes me angry, actually? Now that we've mentioned...
I really don't, James. I've never seen you pissed off.
Now that we've mentioned Remo Williams and Cloud Atlas, is that they did the yellow face better in Remo Williams.
They did. That was a great makeup job.
I had no idea that was Joel Grey for years.
Yeah, it took me a long time. You knew something was off.
Yeah.
Even when you were young and watching it for the first time. But
you might have thought they just made him, they had taken an actual Asian man and made him look older, shaved his head. Something like that.
You knew there was makeup. You didn't know how it was applied.
You never would have thought there was a sort of a feet-looking small white guy under that makeup. You wouldn't have... I never thought until I heard.
No, it was years later. Yeah. And so if you want to check out a really cool old movie, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins. They were trying to start this as a franchise. It's got some of the best mentor-student relationship stuff I've ever seen in any movie. It kind of puts the Star Wars mentor-student relationship to shame.
Yeah.
Like, it's really well done, really well written.
Great fight scenes on the Statue of Liberty back when it was covered in, if any of our listeners remember, when it was covered in scaffolding when they were redoing it.
And real stunt guys fighting on the Statue of Liberty. And some huge...
Yeah, back when you couldn't just CGI all that shit.
Yeah. Some wonderful one-liners between Chun and Remo.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. Are we really going to end the podcast on Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, a 32-year-old movie? Not even movie, a cult movie?
I think we are.
That seems to be where we're at.
Let's finish our martinis. Go to the bar, fellas.
Sounds good.
Till next week.